Merry Christmas, everyone. My name is Juxtapo. Let's play at Warhammer 40k Armageddon. If you're a Warhammer fan, you probably already know all about this. It is a turn-based, hex-based, I don't know if I want to say basic. Yeah, I guess it is basic strategy game. And I don't have to tell you any more about it. There's next to no animations. The maps are extremely abstract, perhaps. What I can attempt to tell you, that's all the time it takes to describe the game. We're done. Okay, moving on. What I can attempt to do is describe why it is appealing. Here we have a map. Yeah, of sorts, laid out in hexes. This is in one of the hives. That's how far you can zoom. This is the deployment phase, and this is the Blood Angels DLC. And here's the troops I have at my disposal already. And if I want, I can hit this button right here and upgrade each one to a different unit of the same type. And here, go in the purchase screen, I have 3 empty slots and this much requisition to spend on them, and these are the units I can put in those slots. Now if I get infantry, I can select an infantry squad to go on foot with a rhino or with an upgraded rhino as a transport. You see it in the background, you see the modified cost. And I'm still just describing mechanics and not why it's appealing. This is before the match starts, the deployment phase. I take my troops and I put them in these slots, or spaces, squares, hex, as I see fit, much less willy-nilly than this. And then I hit end deploy, and with a blast of trumpets, the round starts. And this is the turn counter. It is currently our turn. Underneath each unit you see a little arrow indicating they haven't moved yet and can still do so, and a little round bullet shell, I'm going to say bolt, that indicates they have not attacked yet. They may do each once per turn. Their other options are disband. You can have them hop in their transport if they have one, and if they're at extremely low health it might be beneficial. You can have them sleep, and I'm not sure if it has any beneficial effects. You may reinforce them, and I cannot remember what exactly this does. Beneath each one you have a number indicating how many of that unit is in each squad. This gives me trouble, because to me that's Predator, not a squadron of 7 wee Predators. That's just a tank. But I still haven't branched off into why this is appealing. For the most part, if you give me a game description, a strategy game description on PC that starts with the words turn-based, you lost me. You know, a real-time strategy is far and away my favorite genre of PC game, and I get enough turn-based on tabletop, which is perfect, but I don't necessarily want it, on my computer. So yeah, I'm still struggling to put into words why this was so very neat. It's so very neat. It's still captivating. This is all I've been playing. I mean, I've dipped into some indie titles to try to make a video. I'll probably cobble those together at some point. But if I was to tell you honestly what I've been playing, I'll plop down in here at my rig and play another round of this. I'm chewing deep into the Imperial campaign, the main campaign. Just popped into the DLC because I wanted to see all the neat Space Marine stuff. One of the things that makes it appealing, that every reviewer who has had any truck with this game has mentioned, is the selection of units. Nowhere near as much for the Space Marines here. And they have the unique units for the Blood Angels. There's the Hellfire Dreadnought, there's the Ball Predator, and it looks neat. You can get DLC for the Ultramarines. You can get DLC for the Salamanders. Of course, the Imperial Guard, let's go over there, has a tremendously greater variety of tanks, and I have not, I haven't reached a point in the game where I have them all unlocked. This is just where I'm at now, all the various Lehman Russes. Of course, now if you ask me, it's just all Vanquishers all the time, that big old Vanquisher cannon with it. Okay, so your turn starts, click on a unit, move it someplace, and if there's anything there, shoot at something. Let's take our Ogrins, push them forward. Whoop! There's some Grots. We have action. Okay, the Grots attacked us and we counterattacked, and that was that. So if it even used up our attack. Let's take our heavy bolter squad and attack. And there, dead Grots. Now, granted, to really get into it requires an exercise of imagination. Like I said before, that's just a tank to me. How am I? Am I turning into a grognard? Am I slowly coming out of the closet as an old guy? I don't know. The turn-based thing is extremely relaxed. It's very chill. You can get up and walk away from it and come back to it, and it's not sacrificing depth. Granted, if I click on these Ogrins here, this tank is in range. If I mouse over it, see on the far right here the two health bars, that shows how much damage I have my unit here has the potential to do, and how much damage they could potentially suffer from return fire. There is an element of RNG. There's accuracy issues and so forth. Let's see what transcribe. No, that's pretty well spot on for that matchup. So most of the information is laid out right here for you to see. Fog of War Zone, you can turn it off, but all these buildings are probably teeming with orcs. We'll slip our snipers around there after we peg the crew of that tank, or well, somebody that won't die as fast. So it's a lot volume. It's a strategy game, and it also plays a lot like a Warhammer themed puzzle, I guess. Or if you just come at it from a different angle and try a different solution, you'll get them next time. And the theme helps tremendously. The Slitherine, the company that made this, has made a bunch of World War II games using this engine that play very similarly. But like many people, I came for the Warhammer and I stayed for the gameplay. I mean, like I said, I didn't expect to like it, but after watching a few videos, you see the claw marks that indicates a melee, which of course my Ogrins are very strong in melee, so getting them directly adjacent to something like that is a good way to wipe it out. So that's neat. The turn, but I don't know that this game is getting me over my turn-based prejudice. That's how the transports works, by the way. If it's outside of the foot range of an infantry squad, they'll hop in their transport and then tootle over here, and then the transport itself can attack if something winds up in range. However, losing a transport is exponentially more costly because it's carrying infantry. And at the beginning of the next turn, they'll pop out and that squad will be there. So yeah, it gave me a newfound appreciation for turn-based strategy. It very much reminds me, most people who have played this game and other games probably won't see the connection, but it very much reminds me of the Crescent Hawk's Revenge from 1990, the game that got larval juxtaposed into computer gaming and strategy games from the get-go. Strongly reminds me of that. Playing a turn-based game is relaxed, and you know, just pop down and play some when I feel like it and not be stressed about it. Sit here and talk to you guys. This line of skulls right here, this is the experience level of this unit, and they persist across the campaign. There we go. This fella here has been with me for a while. I've gotten much work out of him, and if I upgrade this unit, then whatever, I could only upgrade him to a different tank. But if I do, whatever tank takes his spot, the crew will still have that experience, and it does boost their attack numbers and maybe their chance to hit, their accuracy a bit. And if you right click on a unit, it brings up its information tab, and here's all these lovely delicious stats. And I figured out completely by accident you can right click right here and rename them, and I resolved not to do that because it tends to get you attached to units. I did rename this fellow because of how long he's been with me. That's the non sequitur. That's my flagship, if you will, my flag tank. And that's a pleasant callback to oh no, War for Middle Earth. I think was that the right name of the real-time strategy that came out shortly after the Lord of the Rings movies? Battle for Middle Earth. Excuse me. Yeah. The battle for Helm's Deep is over. The battle for Middle Earth has just begun. That one, and that had persistent XP gain for your troops and let you name them and so forth. And I'm one of those emotional types where if you name the puppy, you get attached to it. In this case, if you name the Vanquisher, you get attached to it. And just like the World War II games are a big hit with history buffs, Warhammer nerds with just being able to put all these little variants of tanks and different types of infantry on the table is really cool, especially since Warhammer miniatures are expensive in their own right, but to get all this stuff you have to go to Forge World, which is Warhammer's bespoke high-end custom whatever miniature catalog, and they get way more expensive. Now the nuts and bolts where the real science comes into it is these stats here. There's leadership, number of kills, it's blah 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 blah, how far it can move, its movement type, how far it can spot 2 hexes away for these poor fellows. It's melee accuracy, it's ranged accuracy. This is a super neat little icon right here. Support weapons means that not only will they attack on their turn and when they're ordered to attack, but they will also fire back if an adjacent friendly unit is attacked. So that gives you a really neat sense of pattern building. The Griffin here is an artillery unit. That heavy mortar mounted inside of it has a range of 2 to 3 hexes, and this indicates it is indirect. It can shoot over things. It can hit targets it doesn't have direct line of sight on. Oh, that also means that if you can, that means spotters are a thing in this game. So if you can get a unit to do a little recon around a building or a pile of rubble or a mountain, then you can drop indirect fire from. That adds another layer of complexity. But it's also a ooh, look at that. Yeah, it has the support tag. So this is an artillery piece that will do retaliation fire if an enemy fires on an adjacent friendly. So if this tank gets shot, both of these fellows here have the support tag. They will both shoot back at the offending aggressor, provided he's in range. Interplays like that are really neat. My Bombard here, who's also been with me a while, you see he's racked up the experience points. has the indirect, but does not have the support tag. He does have bulky. That means that heavy siege mortar there, they're not going to you're not going to snap shoot at anybody with it. So if somebody shoots at him, they're not going to suffer any repercussions from that tank, because this one, the Griffin's got that heavy bolter mounted on the front. See the stats for it right there, and that's its self-defense weapon. It'll throw off a burst of fire in defense of itself when it's attacked. Nothing like that on the Bombard. And you also notice the siege mortar has a range of 3 to 5. It means it has a minimum range. So if anybody gets within that 3 hex circle, you can't. So he needs to be back there safe. But yeah, it's what you think of with an artillery. Now you see, once you start digging into these stats, there's all this little detailed nuance. So even though the gameplay is simple, you click on a dude, you click where you want him to move, and you click on what you want him to shoot at, and done and done. There you go. That's all there is to learn. But once you start parsing these stats and realizing which various models of what are good at what, like for the longest of the time, I was looking at range and damage and was fielding bombards as my artillery because they shot really far, did a lot of damage. See, pretty straightforward. I didn't realize the little Griffins had the support tag and could fire at stuff, in retaliation, which made them useful for additional damage behind my front line. The Basilisks here are the longest ranged artillery. They don't do the most damage, but they're the longest range. And there's 2 variants of them. Here we have the Armageddon pattern with the enclosed, and this is the planet we're fighting over. That's why the game's named that, which has additional armor. And I think it's a little more accurate. Could be wrong. Have to check the stats. And once you start digging into the stats, then congratulations, you found the game. The Medusa, yeah, this thing baffled me. I mean, it looked like it should do a crap ton of damage. I actually think it does more damage than the Bombard, but it wouldn't shoot. I bought an expensive artillery piece with great stats that it was broken. I couldn't figure it out. Didn't know what was wrong with it until I got to digging into it. There's the bulky tag, so that weapon won't shoot to defend itself, but it does have a bolter. And there's the rank and blah 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 blah. Why could it does not have the indirect fire. Now if I was a little more brushed up on my 40k lore, I would have known that it's harder to use because it has to have a clear line of sight to what it's shooting at. Oddly enough, it made it one of my favorites because it's challenging, but it tends to wipe stuff off the map when you do get it right. The Vanquishers that I have such a crush on, they're one of 2, I think, Lehman Russ variants that can shoot out to range 4, and we're fighting against orcs, and most of the stuff the orcs have, even their long range stuff, tends to cap at range 3. So having a tank line that can shoot just out of range of your opponents was a great boon. The hexes, tons of places infantry. They're very bland. They're not interesting, not pretty, not to scale, and I'm over it. It doesn't matter. Tons of places your infantry can go that the vehicles can't. Infantry are never irrelevant, which is a great thing. If you just mouse over a hex, you see the stats for it: cover percentage, blocks line of sight, defense, yes, no. The trenches, 50% cover and +5 defense. Your soldiers are actually more, going to last longer in these trenches. And of course, they just look like hatch lines when you zoomed out. It took me a while to realize those were even trenches. Your tanks can go in there also. They look ridiculous, but it's just this big tank icon parked over that little line. But they can go in there and benefit from that defense bonus. They can only go in where the ramps are. So even though it's a very ugly game, it is a surprisingly detailed game. All the rubble, now that's classic 40k. A crater gives a little bit of a defensive bonus. If these right here were not destroyed, these are artillery pieces, and in some You come across healthy ones you can use in some maps, but their range is like 3 to 5, and they can only see 2, so they have to have spotters. So, if you can be drawn in with the Warhammer, give this game a chance. The one massive glaring caveat being Slitherine wants $40 for it, and it's not worth that. I mean, I like it a great deal, but I would definitely wait for a sale. And I'd wait for a sale on the DLC too. I think it was down for like $2 a pack for Black Friday. And like I said, there's 3 different Space Marine chapters you can play as, and so forth. And that is my babbly, roundabout, tumbling down a slippery slope description of why Warhammer 40k Armageddon is a fun game. If you already knew this about turn-based games and you want to berate me for my narrow-mindedness, please do so down in the comments. If you like this video and like to see some more like it, preferably more cohesive ones, like and subscribe, and Merry Christmas, everybody.